Hello everybody, my name is Ashley and I'm here to speak about what stood out for me on the educational problems in South Africa, focusing on language. First thing that stood out for me was learners when they were young learning in their home language, the benefits about that and how it will help them in future learning. This brings me back to another thing that stood out for me was language in apartheid time, how English and Afrikaans is only the languages that were seen being able to learn it in school. However, the another thing that stood out for me, which links with everything that I mentioned, was having teachers that are bilingual. The benefits is I see is more greater when a learner learns in their home language. However, finding teachers that can teach in their home language is going to be very difficult. I already understand that learning different languages is already so hard. I only know 2 languages, and I feel like it's such a big accomplishment when someone knows more than 2 languages. Another thing that stood out for me was how important it is for parents or guardians to expose learners to reading at home. I understand it's a teacher's duty to expose learners to reading. However, I feel that not only can a teacher encourage a learner, but a learner gets encouraged more when their family is interested in their learning. I remember when I was younger, I had to go to the library every week because my mother said I should take 2 books out every week, and I had to read it. And I had to tell her at the end of the week what that book is about. And till this day, I love reading on my own. However, it makes me think of something else, of how that stood out for me was how we are so eager to read personal books that we want to read or choices that we make. However, we are not so eager to read our schoolwork. But reading should be made fun and enjoyable for a learner. And then another thing that stood out for me was learners that drop out of school. It is a really sad thought. I find it so sad because I know personal stories of people that was almost finished with the matric and they're in jail right now. I find that so sad. And if you are a dropout, I really think it's so hard for people to find work without matric. I do believe that youngsters feel like getting fast money is easier. But the importance of reading, I find, is so much greater. Reading is literally everywhere, all around us, and I think it's so important. However, we know that reading is so important, but another thing that stood out for me was finding teachers that can effectively teach reading. There's so much factors that a teacher should know to be able to teach reading effectively. And then another thing that stood out for me was how oral language is genetic makeup. It's literally built in us. We don't need to be taught, but reading, to be able to read, you need to be taught how to read. I find it so crazy how when you are young you can learn language, oral language, and are able to speak without even knowing how to read it. That I find was one of the interesting things that stood out for me.